And to help us better understand what this means for Russian athletes and the Olympics in general, we're joined now by Robert Boland. He's an expert in the business of sports and sports law. He's coming to us from New York City. Robert, thanks so much for joining us. What can you tell us about Professor McLaren, and what are your thoughts on this report?
I know Professor McLaren from an organization we're both members of, and he's a past president of, the Sports Lawyers Association. It's an American and Canadian group. His integrity is really without question, and he's been an arbitrator in the International Court of Arbitration for Sport for a better part of 15 years, since the founding of that court. So the fact that Dick Pound, a Canada-based WADA, sent him to do this, and he's a Canadian himself, is not an unusual choice, but the sweeping indictment of the Russian Federation, its political forces, its Ministry of Sport, and then its anti-doping forces are unprecedented. And I think we're seeing the IOC, the group who has the ultimate decision-making power here, push to the brink of a decision that has no prior precedent in history, particularly with a world power nation, regarding their participation in the Olympics.
And as you say, the ball firmly in the court of the IOC, but you aren't sure they have the backbone to really take the really strong stand that they need to.
It would be certainly unprecedented that the IOC has ever taken that courageous a political stance. And I think it's important to think that this is more than just about sport and who gets to participate in the Olympics. Vladimir Putin, whether he ordered it, cognized it, or looked the other way from it in his own government, it has ties to the top of Russian geopolitics. After the bad performance in the Olympics in 2010, they weren't going to repeat that in Sochi, the Olympics they were hosting. We see widespread doping across almost all of their Olympic sports, and widespread cover-up from two labs, one in Sochi during the Olympics and one in Moscow, that goes back even farther. So the fact that we've yet to hear or see the other shoe drop politically from Russia, and I'd be surprised that it doesn't. I'm not sure whether the IOC will take that bold in action, again, thinking about how important a geopolitical player Russia is. I always like to think that this is just statecraft by games in some cases at the Olympics.
What about the argument, hey, everybody's doing it? I mean, we look at Lance Armstrong, who got away with it for years. There's been accusations more recently here in the United States about Peyton Manning, other athletes from other countries, obviously, who've been accused. What about that argument?
Mike, you're absolutely right. Doping is not being vindicated by this process. In fact, I think they're hoping to seek vindication in this decision, whether it's WADA or whether it's the local country doping authorities that are subject to WADA's rules. We have remained behind the cheaters throughout probably about a 60-year arc since testosterone was isolated, or a 70-year arc since testosterone was first isolated and blood doping came into our system. The people who want to take advantage and cut corners have always been ahead. So this may be a situation where the IOC is hard-pressed to enforce its most stringent penalty, again, simply because it's pervasive in Russia. You've never seen an indictment so large and so strong and so definitive about a single nation, but it's been widespread throughout the history of the games, and nothing is new in that conclusion.
Robert Boland joining us from New York. Thanks so much.